Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Secondary Sources lecture. This lecture is part of the legal writing course online. Let's get started. So, what we'll learn in this video. First, we'll describe the various types of secondary sources. And we'll talk about when to use which type of source. And then we'll talk about secondary sources in print or online. These days, most information is online. You'll use a service like Westlaw or LexisNexis, and we'll basically talk about these resources online. So, secondary sources, also called secondary authorities. These are texts that provide commentary and analysis of the law for the benefit of the researcher, the reader. And they come in a variety of forms. They can be general, they can be specific, they can be jurisdiction specific, they can be written for experts, or they can be written for the general audience. And the important thing to know is that you can use the different secondary sources at different parts of your research. Remembering that our research is an iterative process, so we may get to a point where we've learned about our research in more depth. We need to go back maybe and revisit a secondary source that was maybe a little bit too complicated at first. Or maybe we hit a dead end and we have to go back and revisit a more general secondary source to help us get through that dead end. So some common types of secondary sources. We have what's called legal encyclopedias. Here we have breadth but not depth. You can get a good introduction to a lot of different legal topics for this. So I guess I should say it first. For these legal citations, you'll have kind of a depth component and breadth component, meaning the breadth is it's going to talk about a lot of different subjects, but not so deep. Whereas some secondary sources might talk about a limited number of topics, but really dig deep into those topics. And then kind of the third component is its citability, whether or not you're going to be able to cite this in a brief to the court, or to what weight you should give the source. So then the next secondary source are practice materials, practice series. And these vary in depth and breadth. And usually you'll use this in like jurisdiction-specific research. So if you're in the United States, you'll have an Indiana practice series where it drills down on Indiana law. So not all practice series and materials are created the same, so depth and breadth varies, so does the citability. Now, American law reports are another type of secondary source. Lots of breadth, less depth. It's basically kind of a summary of topics, low citability. They're a good general idea of the lay of the land. Now, restatements. Restatements are highly credible, so you can cite to them, and they usually go into a great depth on areas in the common law. So I would consult these when you really need to drill down on a topic. Model codes and uniform acts. These provide annotations to relevant case law. And these are areas focused that are covered by statutory law. So I would turn to these if you want to consult the annotations of the model code and uniform acts. Treatises, these go into great depth on a subject. Citability varies on the reputation of the treatise. Form books we have if you need a certain form or a template contract, can be somewhat useful in finding the law or kind of getting you oriented in a certain direction. Then we have law reviews and law journals. So these are usually in-depth analysis of a very narrow piece of the law. Citability varies. Also realized once a law review is published, that's it. They're usually not updated. I love consulting law review articles almost from the get-go, just to get the lay of the land. So again, we have legal encyclopedias. They're the most general of secondary sources, lots of breadth, less depth. They can get you kind of oriented on a wide range of topics. AmJur, Corpus Juris Secundum, is the two of the most widely known encyclopedias. And then you'll have state-specific encyclopedias as well. Just to summarize again, we have practice series, practice materials. They are like encyclopedias, but they are jurisdiction specific. So you'll have an Indiana practice series. The American Law Reports, ALRs, tons of volumes called annotations. They have kind of breadth and depth varies. And the annotations are good because they summarize case law on topics in a variety of jurisdictions. The Restatements and Principles of Law, they are publications by the American Law Institute, the ALI, and they kind of clarify and organize the state of case law on a given topic. You could say they restate the law. They restate the case law in kind of terms that are easy to understand. Model codes, uniform acts. So these, again, the ALI, Uniform Law Commission, they publish model codes and uniform acts. One notable example is the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, or the Model Penal Code. And they provide commentary to each, or annotations to each section, each article. Treatises are comprehensive texts on a narrow topic. They are generally provide more analysis than the encyclopedias or ALR annotations. And you can kind of see these, they kind of take the name of the person who wrote the treatise. So for example, Farnsworth on contracts, this person on copyright, that sort of thing. Form books. So these kind of have, like on the litigation side, you'll have jurisdiction-specific motions because there's usually like a standard format for that certain motion. They sometimes come with explanations. An example would be West's legal forms. These are kind of a general, neutral jurisdiction set of forms. And then again, just to summarize, the law reviews and law journals. They are very narrow, very specific, provide very narrow, very specific analysis on a very narrow part of the law. And they focus on novel topics. So if you're really going down an area where you're not finding a whole lot, maybe there's a secondary source that could help you kind of pinpoint a very narrow piece of the law. So now talking about the uses of secondary sources. Right, we have different scenarios where we want to use secondary sources. I use secondary sources as a quick overview to get myself smart and oriented in an area of the law that might be unfamiliar, or I don't understand a specific jurisdiction. I may understand it in Indiana, but I don't understand it in California. Realize that secondary sources, you have to be careful citing them. They are citable, but you have to realize the weight that courts will give secondary sources. Courts will cite to law review articles, even though that's not a primary source, but it happens. Why else use secondary sources? Unfamiliar area of law or jurisdiction. So we can get a quick overview of the state of the law in a specific jurisdiction. Underdeveloped law, we can get kind of an idea of, especially if you want to use a law review article, what's going on in an area of the law that's not fully developed yet. We can use secondary sources as a kind of pathfinder to a path to what would be a path to primary sources. So for example, the ALR kind of summarizes cases that we can, or that's easily readable. So it's summarizing the cases. So that source would lead us to the cases which are primary sources of law. And then once we get those to those cases, we can go down that further down that path. We can also cite to secondary sources as persuasive authority, especially if an area of the law is underdeveloped. Here's what learned scholars say on a very narrow topic in this law review article. You could also cite to the restatements instead of all of these cases that you've gathered, because that's basically what the restatements do. They provide black letter law that has emerged from case law. So moving to researching secondary sources. This can be a challenge. So if we have online legal platforms like Westlaw, LexisNexis, you'll be able to browse those sources on a topic, possibly. And when you browse by a topic, you can find that topic, usually in alphabetical order, that you need. And it's good often to see the topics rather than to have to search for them, because there's the idea that sometimes you don't know what to search for. So you can browse the contents and to further understand, to kind of expand your vocabulary, right? That sort of thing. So in Westlaw, and we'll talk about this more in the electronic research, there is an America Law Reports section. You can see texts and treaties. You'll see a section for law reviews and journals, and there's a section for forms. Although this might vary by the terms of your subscription, but that's kind of generally the case. You could do a general search on a keyword, and it will kind of list out as well. On this keyword, we've found 50 law review articles. There's a couple treatises that talk about this, and so on. And then you can focus in on those different types of secondary resources after you've done a general search. Kind of the same thing for LexisNexis. So, and then once you've kind of done a general search, you can again kind of focus in on what secondary source you want to use, what jurisdiction you need to use in terms of a state or a circuit. You can also focus in on practice area as well, like bankruptcy, tax law, banking, that sort of thing. So in addition to kind of the Westlaw and LexisNexis platforms, you can also go to online catalogs to find secondary sources. So usually your library, your law library, will have an online catalog that you can use to browse using keywords, that sort of thing. You'll be able to find resources in your library and partner libraries. So in with WorldCat, libraries all over the world will contribute their records. So you can search there and then see if your library has access to the resource, so you can identify the appropriate information database. Online research guides are also valuable. And your library might keep a research guide on a specific topic, like say for example, international law. They might list out where you can find sources of international law, sources for bankruptcy law. So kind of like a start here guide for whatever area of the law. Again, you could use Google to help you out. And there's also a function in Google. If you enter cite and then colon, use that operator, it'll restrict your search to that specific site. So maybe you go to a website and they don't have a search function and it's crawled by Google. You can go and type in cite colon and put that site in and then put your keyword search. It'll focus on that site. And again, you could always use your reference librarian, law librarian. These people are fantastic. They're trained in information curation and retrieval, and they are an invaluable resource. Just as an aside, we do live in information age, and everything is going online. But to me, librarians kind of, as the curators of our collective knowledge on a subject, I believe they will never go away. I've always had good experiences with librarians, and I have nothing but great things to say about librarians. So consult your legal librarian. If you're lucky enough for your law firm to have a librarian, consult them as well. So you'll have electronic sources. So sources in print and sources electronically. And nowadays, everything is electronic. You might need to, in certain circumstances, actually go and pull a book or a textbook. But even then, a lot of times those textbooks and books can be found online. Even if you just need a specific section, it might be the case where if it's fair use, there might be a situation where you can maybe get a copy of that just specific section. So again, things to think about if you're in the print world would be that it's not so easy to update print versions as it is to update the electronic version. So you would see these kind of like what's called loose leafs to update kind of treatises or practice materials that are published in a binder. So they might be in a binder, and then as kind of updates come in, you'll see the updates come in the bound version. Electronic secondary sources are usually more updated. You can search, keyword search, that will bring back hundreds, if not thousands, of results. Law review articles, you can find them in indexes. Sometimes you can find them on Westlaw or LexisNexis. Hein Online is another good one. So again, these indexes allow you to search across a number of different sources. Hein Online is probably the most comprehensive of the law school law reviews and journals. Westlaw and LexisNexis are also very good for law reviews and law journals. And then there are free resources. There is a movement recently to have things open access, so open access articles, open source textbooks. So I base my legal writing course in part off of an open source textbook. You can go to Professor's SSRN, the Social Science Research Network. You can usually download law review articles or current research for free there. Digital Commons is a platform where you can get a faculty scholarship. Then Google Scholar is a possibility. So you can consult a lot of different sources. Doesn't necessarily need to be paid sources. Free secondary sources are good to get you in the direction, but I would say sometimes you might have to access a paid service. You could go to your local library or go to your librarian to find that source. Again, so how secondary sources fit into this whole process of research. I use it to get myself started, to orient myself to the area of law, to find a path towards primary sources. And remembering too that you can use secondary sources in any step of the research process. It doesn't have to be at the beginning. You could get going, and you might have to, since the process is iterative, go back and consult the secondary sources again to inform yourself, to widen your vocabulary, and to maybe rephrase the issue or legal question that you have. So that's all I'd like to talk about on secondary sources. Thanks, everybody, and take care.